Hello, everyone, and welcome back to Design to Win. I am so glad that you're here with me today because this is such an important conversation today, especially for families who are getting ready for the big transition. We're talking about moving from middle school to or elementary to middle school or middle school to high school or even college. And if you're a parent, you already know this is not just a schedule change. This is not just a simple change. This is a whole life shift for your children, for you too, especially if this is your first child moving into middle school or high school or college. This change is for, it's a new school, new expectations, new friends, new challenges. And for many students, this can feel exciting, but also very overwhelming and sometimes even a little scary. So today I want to talk through how we can prepare our students, not just academically, but emotionally, practically, and most importantly, in who they are. Because this season matters more than most people even realize. This stage of life is a very formative stage. This is where students begin to ask questions like, where do I fit? And what am I good at? And most importantly for them, who are my people? They start trying new things like sports and music, art and clubs of all kinds. And in all those experiences, they begin discovering their gifts and their talents. But at the same time, this is also where comparison can start. This is where insecurity can grow. And this is where many students begin to define themselves based on what others think. And that's why this transition needs to be handled with intention. But what they believe about themselves in this season can shape how they move forward for the years to come. So let's talk honestly for a moment. This transition can be really hard. There's a lot of anxiety for some kids. There's fear of the unknown, and there's great social pressure. And unfortunately, for some students, there's bullying, and I have dealt with that. I've seen it greatly as a teacher, but I've also dealt with that with one of my children being bullied a lot. And this can be especially challenging when your student learns differently. Students with ADHD, autism, dyslexia, dysgraphia, or dyscalculia, or other learning or physical differences. These students are often incredibly gifted, but they are also often very misunderstood. And when others don't understand them, they can begin to feel like something is wrong with them. But I want to say this clearly. Please hear this. Difference does not mean less at all. It just means different. And part of preparing students for this transition is helping them understand their value. It is so important to do that before the world tries to define it for them, because that's what happens is the world defines their value as not worthy, but that's not true. So let's talk about what we can do to actually prepare them for going into these new schools. There are really two sides of this. First, I would say it's the school support, making sure that the schools give you the IEPs and the 504s and they're updated to move into the next school, the next middle school or high school or even college, that all of their testing for their learning differences, whatever their IEPs and 504s are for, that all their testing is accurate and it's up to date before they transition. It should be done every 3 years. And then making sure that the accommodations are clearly in place and that they're all drawn out going into the new school. These things matter greatly. They protect your student and they give them access to the support they need in the new school. And if you don't have that, it's going to be a struggle. So please, please, please make sure that you get that from the school. And don't let them tell you they're going to just send it to the other school. Get a physical copy of it from the school. You're entitled to that. And you have a copy of it so you can take it to the new school so they can't say that they didn't get it. That's really important. So on the second side of that, I want to say is the students being ready, their readiness to go into that new school environment. Because when you transition from elementary school to middle school, there's a big difference in how you do your work and what you have to keep up with and more of your responsibility. And the same thing goes from junior high to high school. There's a lot more responsibilities on the kids of what they need to know. So they need to, they need to be prepared. They need to know how to stay organized. They need to know how to manage their time. And really importantly is they need to ask for help. And a lot of students don't know how to do that. I'm just going to be real with you. Asking for students is not something that's easy for them. I had so many students over the years that were terrified to come ask me for help. And I would repeatedly tell them, if you're struggling with something, please, please ask me. I won't know unless you ask me. But some students unfortunately, had teachers in the past that would not listen to them or they didn't understand, or the teachers didn't follow their accommodations and modifications, and that makes students resistant and hesitant to ask again. So as parents, you need to help your students learn to advocate for themselves and be a big advocate for them. Help them to learn what to say to a teacher and how to say it to them, and tell them that their voice matters. They have the right to speak up for what they feel like they need and the accommodations that they need. So, because really and truly, if they can learn how to do this, it's really important because they will have to advocate for themselves in other situations other than school as they get older. And we all know that as adults. So, work on that and practice that with them. I think another important piece to this transition is a student's confidence. And the confidence doesn't happen just overnight. It's something that has to be built, and we all know that. As parents, we've walked through that ourselves, and we've seen our kids having to struggle through that. So one way that we can support them by setting students for early wins is that they know that having a schedule that includes some classes for them might help them be a little bit more comfortable transitioning into that new school. It can make a big difference for some kids. I know for one of my children in particular, managing her schedule and working with the school to navigate classes to start off into that new school environment that were easier for her, that she knew that she could do well, helped her to have confidence in one area going into the school of having to learn all the new things about teachers and where new things are and all that. So, because when kids walk into a new school environment, they have new experiences and the environment is different, but we want them to be successful in some area as they begin this transition. And it will help them greatly. So let's talk about preparing them before school starts. I know we're talking about working with them over summer break. And really and truly, I know a lot of you parents and the students just want a break. They don't want to talk about school. They don't want to do school. They don't want to have anything to do with it. But summer is a great opportunity where your kids aren't having to do schoolwork, aren't having to run to athletic programs or scouts or this or that or all these different things all the time. And they do have more downtime. So it is a good time where their brain is clear to talk to them about what a routine would look like for school for next year and how a daily routine would work for them, and talk to them about expectations for going into school and what they might expect versus what the expectations were in middle school or in elementary school before they transition, and start helping them to practice and talk about good study habits, especially if your child doesn't have good study habits right now, but what new study habits might look like for junior high or for high school. So just have those discussions with them prior to going back to school, a little bit at a time over the summer, and what that would look like. Don't wait until school starts to try to prepare this, because that's just even more overwhelm for them. If you prepare ahead of time, your kid is going to walk with more confidence going into school. And this brings me to something that I have seen that has made a huge difference. Many students struggle not because they are capable of doing things, but because everything is in their head, or they try to keep everything in their head, and that is impossible. They try to keep all their assignments and deadlines and all the responsibilities they have of keeping up with this or keeping up with that, or what they have to do in athletics, or what they have to do in art class or music or clubs or yada, 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 yada. And it becomes really overwhelming. They think they can keep all of it upstairs in their head and they can remember everything they have to do, and they can't. We can't do that. They can't do that, and we can't expect them to do that. What they need is they need a system, and a lot of kids don't have a system and a way of keeping track of all that stuff. They don't have a place to keep everything. They just have stuff here and there. They try to keep it in their head. They don't write stuff down. They don't write everything down they need to. They just kind of have stuff stuffed in this side pocket of their backpack, or in their folder, and they have 10 folders to keep up with, and they have notes that they've written for this class and notes they've written for that class, and they don't know when assignments are due because everything is kind of all over the place, and they have to look through all these digital apps, and on this one they have to find out where the deadline is, and they have to go into this thing and find out where a deadline is. They just have so many things to keep up with. And so because of all that, and all the students I have worked with, especially students with learning differences over the years, and people with ADHD and dyslexia and autism, they have a hard time keeping track of a lot of things anyway. So I created a school planner that does all these things. It keeps all these things in one place. There's a place for them to keep their assignments. There's a place for them to have a look at the month at a glance, a week at a glance. They can write everything down in this one pages and see it all at one time. They can put all of their stuff from outside activities onto that. It really helps them to keep everything into one place. It allows for great structure and clarity, and it helps them to stay really organized. I have taken pieces of things that I have used over the years to help a student be more organized and help another student be organized. And I realized the biggest component is taking all of those things and putting them all together in one thing. So keeping everything in one place is what this planner does. And it also helps them to be able to track their assignments and break all their stuff down. And it really helps them to keep up with their progress in their classes and what they're doing and where they're going. This planner isn't just for kids that struggle, that have learning differences. It's good for everybody, and I have seen it be a big game changer for everybody. It's not about just writing things down. It truly is about reducing the overwhelm and helping to build their confidence in their ability to be autonomous and take care of what they need to take care of. It makes them feel good about themselves to do that. But lastly, I want to talk about what I feel like, on top of everything else we talked about, one of the biggest and important thing that I see today, and I have seen for years, is the struggle our kids have with knowing their identity and who they are. Because at the end of the day, our kids need to know and understand that they have value, they have worth. They need to know who they are. They need to know that they were created on purpose. That really and truly, that the way that they think, the way that they learn, however that is, learning difference or otherwise, and their personality was none of that was a mistake. They may be different from the next person that sits in class with them, but they were not a mistake and they were not made with a mistake. God created them exactly as they were supposed to be. And in the world that we live in, unfortunately, we have to deal with being labeled. And I'm not talking about just being labeled, saying you have ADHD or you have autism or you have dyslexia. But kids are labeled with lots of things. They're labeled with being mean, or they're labeled with being, unfortunately, other names. There's lots of comparison that goes on. And sometimes, unfortunately, a lot of this is tearing them down. But they really need to know that they are valued. They weren't a mistake. They were created exactly how they were supposed to be. And they need to know and have something, a foundation to stand on. They need to know that God created them to be who He created them to be. I believe they need to know this phrase, which is so important. I am who God says that I am. They are created to be special. They are created to have gifts and talents to help other people in the world that we live in. And I think it's important for them to be able to have friends and to look for friends that have the same values and have the same belief that they do, that they can lift each other, encourage each other, support each other, and not give each other labels. And not with people that make them feel like they have to change in order to be able to belong. Because when students know who they really are, the world doesn't get to define them. And that's what bullies do. They define other people. So, if you are a parent that has been listening to me today, I want to just encourage you that, you're doing a great job. Just keep moving forward and just help your child to be more prepared. You may feel like right now they're unprepared, but they're not. We just need to help them to find the confidence in the things that they need to, and to just work with them step by step in this new season to help them to be successful in moving forward with the right support and the right tools and the right foundation. And when we do this, our students can walk with great confidence into this stage of life. And then, if you are a student that has been listening, maybe with your parent or by yourself, I want you to hear this. You are capable. You are valued. You have gifts and talents that are very important. And you have something very valuable to contribute and bring to the world that you live in around you. So I hope this episode has helped you today. I hope that it's given you some understanding of your child and maybe understanding of what you need to do to equip you, to help you to move forward into this new stage in your life for this next school year. So if you liked what you heard today, please follow me on my podcast and share it with others. And please stay tuned so that you don't miss out on more great information that I will be giving out over the summer. And we'll be talking more about the foundations that we need to have in Christ and in what we should be doing to walk that out in our life, but also to help our kids transition into this new school year. So, and if you are looking for a way to help your students to stay organized and reduce the stress and just walk into the school year prepared, check out my planner on my website, daraleigh.com. You can purchase it there or on amazon.com. It's called the Design to Win Planner, and it will help your student to be a lot more successful. And I'm excited for them to get their hands on that. So I thank you so much for taking the time to spend with me today, for listening. I hope that you have gained a lot from this. And please remember, you and your children were designed to win. Until next time, have a blessed day.